Hey everybody, welcome in to Between the Tackles. Coming to you from the hall at Patriot Place. I am your host, Michaela Vernava, alongside Zach Cox and Doug Kide. Guys, pretty cool that we're able to bring the podcast to everyone from the hall. A lot of legendary stuff around here, lots to look at.
A lot of nice memorabilia. We got some nice jerseys here behind us. A little Steve Young, Joe Montana, Jim Zorn, legend.
Yeah. A big part of the reason we're here is because it's disgusting out.
It's not good.
It's not fun.
Under the weather, both figuratively and literally. I haven't been feeling well, and it's raining. I seem to be confused by that. It's gross out there.
I wasn't confused by it. It was just really had to let that one sink in, I think.
Why?
I don't know. I've never heard someone being under the weather literally. It makes sense.
It's gross out, and the rain is falling
Well, I guess
on us.
right now we aren't literally under the weather because we're inside.
Well, I was at practice, and that's just, in Bill Belichick's world, that's just an opportunity to evaluate ball security.
Yeah, it was football weather out there. Unfortunately, it's 5 days from June instead of late November. So not the greatest conditions for spring practice, but I guess they got to work on their ball security today for sure.
I mean, we'll get to that, but this was the first OTA session open to media, so we finally got to see some of the new guys out there, and even though it was a gross day.
There were quite a few drops that we saw from on the offensive side of the ball. Austin Carr, Brandon Bolden, Chris Hogan had a drop, and as well in punt return drills, we saw Cyrus Jones having some issues fielding balls again, which is not a good sign for last year's top pick. He had issues as a punt returner last year. We're seeing those continue into the spring this year. Not a great sign. He will certainly have to improve in coverage and as a punt returner as training camp and preseason progresses, or else he could potentially be left off this roster.
I want to dive much deeper into Cyrus Jones and a lot of other defensive backs, but let's start with offense first. Coming in to OTAs, you guys had a list of players, offensive players to watch. I want to start with quarterbacks. JACOBY BRISSETT. McDaniels actually said today that this is the first time he can remember that he has the same three guys coming in 2 seasons in a row, which was an interesting point. He was asked.
Kind of a rarity in the NFL.
Yeah, so the same 3 returning, Brady, Garoppolo, and JACOBY BRISSETT. Why is it so important that or so significant that you guys are keeping an eye on Brissett this season, or this offseason?
For me, just because there's so much uncertainty with Jimmy Garoppolo and I guess kind of Tom Brady as we enter the next couple of years. If JACOBY BRISSETT really takes a strong step forward this offseason, the spring, the summer, then the Patriots could potentially trade Jimmy Garoppolo or Tom Brady after this season, because then they'll have the security of knowing that they have a third-year quarterback next year who knows the system well, can play well, showed an improvement during practice. And I mean, it's only one practice for now. We saw him throw 6 passes in competitive drills, but he went 3 for 6. He looked fine. He looked fine last year too, and with another offseason under his belt, he should just know this offense better, and he should take a pretty significant step forward. And if he doesn't, then perhaps he could be left off the roster, because teams don't need 3 quarterbacks, and if he's not showing improvement, if he's not showing the steps that they need him to take, then they could probably use that roster spot and use it on someone else.
How did all 3 quarterbacks look out there today? I mean, it really hasn't been all that long since we last saw them in action. Was it been how many weeks? No.
3.5 months, I think.
Was it that? Just doesn't
feel that long. The Super Bowl feels like it was a week ago.
Definitely flew by. I mean, they look fine. Everybody was a little bit rusty. None of the 3 quarterbacks really stood out with a kind of a wow performance. But like you said, it was gross out. It was sloppy. This is one of the first times. I mean, well, I guess these guys, this is their 3rd practice all together as a full team. Their 3rd OTA sessions. First one we saw, they looked whatever. It was not a. We were talking during the session. There wasn't a ton to take away from the quarterbacks. They looked okay. Some receivers dropped passes. They had some bad passes. We'll be monitoring them a lot more as the preseason goes along.
Brady went 9 of 14 in team drills. Garoppolo went 7 of 13. And like I said, Brissett went 3 of 6. None of them threw interceptions, but Garoppolo threw a pass that was dropped by safety Nate Ebner. It should have been an interception. So that was the closest that we saw come to an interception. But I thought that Brady and Garoppolo both made some pretty nice throws, some nice deep throws. They dropped it into J.J. Foster, Brandon Cooks, Danny Amendola. So I thought both those guys looked pretty much like they usually would. And those poor completion percentage has more to do with the receivers dropping balls than it does with the quarterbacks throwing inaccurately, at least in my opinion.
Well, as far as running backs go, I know it's tough to get maybe a totally accurate gauge on what they're going to look like during OTA since there's no contact, but who stood out to you? I know that Rex Burkhead's a guy that you guys are going to be keeping your eyes on. Did he stand out today, or anyone else surprise you?
Rex Burkhead did have a nice day. I think DJ Foster was the most impressive running back, maybe the most impressive player of this entire OTA session, because he, like Rex Burkhead, like James White, he's another guy who is really skilled in the passing game for a running back. He had a couple very nice catches, some leaping catches, a few touchdowns. So he looked good. And after this practice, we were asking coming in who's going to be the lead back going into the season. We still have no idea. I mean, Brandon Bolden took snaps with the first team offense. I can't imagine Brandon Bolden being the starting running back on this team. I don't even think he's really going to play much offense, if he even makes the team at all. So we didn't really get much clarity in that regard. Didn't see a lot of Mike Gillisley. He's not as much of a receiving threat. He's more of a ball carrier. So in this kind of setting where there's no pads, no contact, the guys who can catch the ball usually stand out a little bit more. Doesn't necessarily mean the other guys are playing poorly. The strengths of their game aren't really highlighted in this setting.
Yeah, I think that Bolden was getting those first team reps just because he has seniority. He knows how to go through these drills, so that's really why he was getting those first team reps. But I agree with you about Foster. I thought that he had a great practice. Rex Burkhead had a nice practice. Foster kind of came in as the forgotten man because the Patriots did add Gillisley, they did add Burkhead. They still have James White, Dion Lewis, brought back Brandon Bolden, still have James Devlin. So a lot of people kind of forgot about DJ Foster, but he didn't practice a lot last spring and last summer because of a hamstring injury. So now with a full offseason under his belt, now that he's healthy, he could be a guy who really does flash during these practices because he's so fast and because he does have those receiving skills.
How did Dion Lewis look? He's a guy that I kind of almost forgot about. He, of course, had that monster game against the Texans when he came back from injury, but then kind of tapered off, sort of quiet end to the season. How did he look out there today?
He was quiet. I mean, I think he had maybe one catch. I was basically with him, I was just looking to see if he was out there at all because he did have that injury in the Super Bowl. We didn't know exactly how serious it was, but he was out there. He didn't seem to be limited at all, but he didn't really stand out in any way.
No, not totally, yeah. I would agree with that.
Well, as far as wide receivers go, how about Brandon Cooks? I know, again, it's early in the game. This is our first session seeing these new guys, but one thing we'll be looking for is his chemistry with Tom Brady.
Yeah, I think that Cooks is one of those guys that just immediately stands out. It was the same deal with Martellus Bennett last year, really kind of the same deal with Chris Hogan last year. When the Patriots bring in these veteran players who are good, who are fast, who are skilled, you can tell it right away. And Cooks, I thought, made a couple nice catches over Malcolm Butler, and I thought that he was a standout right away. I think that he seems to be gelling pretty well with Tom Brady. That will only evolve as the spring and summer go on, but I was impressed.
Yeah, the Brandon Cooks versus Malcolm Butler is going to be a very fun matchup to watch throughout the summer. I mean, these guys have gone at it last preseason, the preseason before, and the joint practices that the Patriots and Saints had. They already started it today. We were talking to Brandon Cooks after the session. We were saying, feeling a little feisty between you guys. He's like, oh yeah, man, it's just going to make most of us better. They're starting it up right away, so that's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, when we saw them clash when the Patriots, as you said, had joint sessions with the Saints, but it's not uncommon to see scuffles break out amongst teammates during the summer because of that. They're not able to go out and actually hit another team, and that was
the
kind
dog days of summer.
Exactly, yeah. So I think, what do you guys think? You think they'll drop the gloves at all?
You never know. I mean, I think from a coaching standpoint, if that happens maybe in the heat of training camp, you kind of you can let it go a little bit. That's guy just being feisty, being competitive. I don't think that's going to happen just yet. I think you have to have, maybe you're a little too hot-headed if you're starting fights in OTAs, but I don't think there's going to be, I don't think it's a negative energy, that kind of, it might boil over at some point, but I think it's more of a competitive thing. From talking from both the guys on both sides, this is a very talented wide receiver group and a very talented cornerback group, so they're going to have some battles this summer.
In terms of him, I mean, would you say unquestionably the most talented wide receiver now on the roster, just in terms of raw talent?
I guess. I mean, he's certainly the fastest. He's probably the most, I mean, he's the fastest. I guess I'd say that about him because obviously Julian Edelman is right up there with him. Chris Hogan is a great athlete. Malcolm Mitchell's even a great athlete, but I think who we didn't see today, he was out. He might still have a lingering injury from the season, or maybe some surgery. We don't know, but that's kind of the best guess when you don't see a guy out there.
I'm looking forward to watching going into next season.
Sophomore league.
Yeah, but Cooks, the speed is what sticks out right away. I think he ran like a 4.33 coming out of college. Doesn't seem to have lost any of that. And the Patriots haven't had a 4.33 receiver in really recent memory.
Yeah.
It's usually not those real speed demons that they have. Matthew Slater is, but he's not really a receiver. So as far as raw ability, I'd definitely say he's the fastest. And we did start to see that today, I thought.
And the fact that he's still only 23.
Yeah.
I feel like people think that this is going to be his 4th season in the league, but he came in very young.
Yeah.
He's one of the youngest players on this team, actually, which is kind of funny. So yeah, he's got a long way to go, only way to go, but up. I confused two sayings there. But yeah, he's good. Yes.
Definitely excited to see what he'll be able to do with this Patriots offense. But would you say that his chemistry with Brady, no reason to think that he wouldn't have good chemistry, but that will be a determining factor in actually how many balls are thrown his way would be Brady's trust in him, and that will be developed now in these early stages and practices and whatnot.
I think you could say that just because Brady's going to have so many weapons this season. It's going to be kind of almost difficult to spread the ball around to all of these wide receivers, running backs, tight ends that they have. So obviously if he and Cooks develop a strong bond this spring and this summer, he's definitely going to be more willing to look Brandon Cooks' way during the season when it comes into those crunch time plays where he has that connection with Julian Edelman, he has it with Danny Amendola. If he builds it up with Brandon Cooks, that's just going to help this offense.
Well, he wasn't willing to give up any information about what it's like playing with Tom Brady as opposed to Drew Brees. He was asked that today.
Funny, yeah.
And he was asked that exact question. He was asked,
how would you compare Tom Brady?
His answer was, well, I was walking my dogs either yesterday or this morning. He named them. I forget their names.
Scout and Archer.
You remembered? I knew it was Scout, and I couldn't remember the other one. And he wanted to give a shout out to them. That was the answer to that.
Yeah, I thought that story was going somewhere.
I did too.
So yeah, I was walking my dogs this morning, and I ran into somebody, and they asked me this question. I told them this. It was just like, nope, I was walking my dogs. I want to say what's up to my dogs.
Which I can understand. Doug, I'm sure you can too.
Yeah,
big dog
absolutely.
person. I want to give a shout out to my dog. What's up, Bella? Love you. Anyway, you want to give
players,
a shout out to your Aussie?
Shout out to Thunder. Shout out to my cat.
That felt really good.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Oscar, shout out to you too.
Pete,
I got my dachshund.
There we go.
Yeah, you don't Instagram about him much.
I don't.
See,
Not enough. I got to get on that.
Yeah, come on,
Not
show
enough
him
shout-outs.
love. Give some shout outs.
Get some
my
basic
Instagram's
dog
covered
shots
with my
on
dog. Yeah. Anyway, I guess we should move on. Tight ends. I want to talk about tight ends. Another loaded position in that there's Gronk and Dwayne Allen, but there is the third spot open.
Yeah.
Jacob Hollister is a guy that you are going to be keeping an eye on.
Yes. He had a catch today.
Yeah, how do you look?
He looked decent. I mean, he's moving around out there pretty well. It's such a small sample size. I saw James O'Shaughnessy kind of juggle a ball at one point. Not exactly what you want to see, but it's one rep out of however many they'll take this spring and summer. So I don't know. I think that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on at this point.
Well, O'Shaughnessy's a guy who spent 2 years with the Chiefs,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
And the Patriots were interested in him a few years ago. So is it a matter of maybe he's in a different situation, obviously, than Hollister, who's an undrafted free agent.
Right.
So O'Shaughnessy, could it be maybe that he just didn't fit with the offense and their scheme in Kansas City? And I guess if we're comparing Hollister and O'Shaughnessy as to who will get the role, what do they have to do to stand out and grab the coach's attention?
I think it's just about standing out in these practices, making the catches. Whoever is better on special teams, I'm sure, potentially will get the nod as well, and James O'Shaughnessy certainly has more NFL experience doing that. He was one of their core special teamers there in Kansas City, so I think that's why he has the edge right now. The Patriots were willing to trade for him in the draft, so that's another thing that could give him the edge, since the Patriots weren't even willing to use a draft pick on Jacob Hollister. But that's just something that we'll have to bear out as the training camp goes along and OTAs. But I think, like I said, special teams is really what gives O'Shaughnessy the edge, but the film is out there on O'Shaughnessy in the NFL, and he hasn't really done much with it. I think he has 8 career catches for 86 yards, so that's a player where despite the upside that he has with his athleticism, I think you have to lower that upside a little bit just because he wasn't getting it done in Kansas City. That doesn't say that he can't get it done here in New England, but you might want to take a younger player with a higher upside like Jacob Hollister over a guy like O'Shaughnessy that you kind of know a little bit more about him at this point, and you know that a team like the Chiefs was willing to give up on him for very little as far as the trade goes.
Well, while we're on tight ends, what did you guys think of Gronk? How did he look out there today?
He looked like Gronk.
He was a beast.
That is literally what McDaniel's answer was today when we asked.
He did. I mean, we were wondering going in. We saw earlier this week the Patriots posted some pictures, some photos from one of the earlier OTA sessions. We saw that Gronk was out there, so we knew he'd at least be in attendance and somehow participating, but he didn't seem to be limited whatsoever. I mean, obviously there's no contact yet, so it's a little easier to be full go in a non-contact situation. But yeah, he made some great catches, some leaping catches. He didn't seem to be hobbled at all by that back injury, so he looks like he's full go.
Patriots put safety Jordan Richards up against him a couple times.
Poor
that
choice.
did not go well for Mr. Richards, who has struggled in coverage throughout his young NFL career. The Patriots put Patrick Chung out on him, and Chung actually made a play and prevented a catch. So, you know, breaking news here, Patrick Chung is better than Jordan Richards.
Hot take.
Very hot take, not exactly a big revelation there, but yeah.
But a big test. I mean, I feel like when you're put up against a guy like that, that is, as a defensive back, your time when you talk about things that could grab a coach's attention is making a play when you're in coverage on Gronk. So.
It's one of those questions that you start to ask players during the dog days of summer of, you go up against Gronk every day, does that make you better as a player? It's like,
iron sharpens iron. I actually said
sure
that
does.
to STEPHON Gilmore today. But before we move on to defense, your opinions on the restructuring of Gronk's contract. What do you make of that situation?
It's good for Gronk, I would say. He can now make up to $10.75 million this season, I believe it is, which is almost double what his cap was, or his max dollar amount was before the restructuring. It's basically, if he stays healthy and he performs as he's proven that he has during his career, he's going to basically double his pay, which is fantastic for him if he can stay healthy.
I think that there's one really interesting element of it, and that is the fact that his play time is factored into it, because I think that there's been some times where there's been speculation that Gronk's family has kept him out of games just to protect him from these injuries that he suffers and to keep him out for a prolonged amount of times, maybe longer than another player will be kept out due to injury. And this contract really prevents his family from having that input, because they're going to want him to get paid. They want him to get that $10.75 million, and for him to get that, to get the All-Pro nod, to get the 90% of snaps, whatever he has to get that top contract, he has to be on the field, and his family has to allow him to be out on the field.
Yeah,
so
that's what I found most interesting about it as well, because when you talk about incentive-based contracts, when it's a benchmark, that's one thing, or Marshawn Lynch or Eddie Lacy's weight incentive-based contract. But when you talk about it in terms of health, incentive to stay healthy, it's kind of like, well, that's presumably something a player can't control, but we'll see if maybe it actually is.
Yeah, well, I mean, from a health standpoint, I think it's just a way to kind of protect them, to say, but one, to keep Gronkowski and his camp happy, basically, because he's woefully underpaid on his regular contract. He's the best tight end in football, and he's not paid like that. So I think this is a way to keep him and his camp happy while also protecting the team. You're not going to give him, so they don't have to risk giving him a huge new contract and then having him get hurt halfway through the season. Because as good as Gronk is, he gets hurt a lot. So if he stays healthy, basically there's no reason he shouldn't get this money if he stays healthy for a full season and doesn't have a precipitous drop off in production, because basically all he has to do is get an All-Pro nod. I mean, all he has to do. Obviously, that's not easy, but for a guy like Gronk, that's pretty much expected. I mean, I can't see him playing 90% of snaps is a lot, especially with how multifaceted this offense is.
I think he's only done that once.
Yeah, and even if he's healthy, that's still pretty difficult to achieve. As are the yardage marks.
90 catches.
90 catch. I think was it 1,200 yards?
I think
1,400 yards. Those are tough to get, but he can definitely get this All-Pro nod. So he should be able to get this money. I think it's a good deal for Gronk. He has to be happy.
And that's what staying healthy being the caveat. I was talking with our producer on our way down here about,
Shout out Marc.
Yeah, shout out Marc DiBenedetto. What up? About this contract and, the future as to why each party would want to do this. And for Gronk, if he were to get hurt again, that kind of lowers his value moving forward because of the concern of, all right, if this guy is just, you know, as you said, yeah, he's one of the best tight ends in the league when he's out there. You know, it sounds basic, but the best availability, the best ability is availability is very true.
But yeah, I mean, for him, he's still gonna, even if he does get hurt midway through this season, he still gets paid what he would have before he restructured this deal. So it's really a win-win. I mean, am I reading it wrong? To me, it looks like there's not really much of a downside.
No, there's no downside for Gronk. I think that a lot of people were wondering, okay, so why did the Patriots do this? I think it really is to incentivize him and his family to keep him on the field when he can be on the field.
Definitely an interesting situation, but let's move on to defense. And your top defensive players you guys are keeping an eye on, STEPHON Gilmore. How did he look out there today? Your first look at him in New England?
I don't know. You know, he didn't really throw the ball his way that much. So I think that that's a good sign. You know, he talked a little bit after practice about going up against Julian Edelman. There's some chippiness already because Julian Edelman likes to talk a lot of crap. So we'll continue to see that throughout spring, throughout the summer. But I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's tough to see how these cornerbacks do when quarterbacks aren't throwing up against them. So we're just going to have to see it as the summer goes along. But as of now, it's a good sign that Brady was not targeting him out there.
Well, Malcolm Butler is another guy we'll be watching for, and he is here at these voluntary practices. So doesn't seem to be there to be any bad blood with all the rumors and everything that was going on.
It doesn't appear so. I mean, if there is, he's doing a very good job of not letting it affect him. I mean, we talked to him for a decent while after practice, and he's usually not a guy who gives us much in the way of good quotes and sound bites. But he was pretty honest today about, he just said, hey, this is in the past. I might not like it, but I'm here now. I'm not going to get any better by sitting on my couch. I'm not going to get any better by complaining about my contract. He said next year, he doesn't know what the future holds. He was asked multiple times whether he wants to be in New England beyond this season. He wouldn't say yes. He says he's very happy to be here right now. He's committed to being here right now. Next year, when his contract's up, who knows? But for now, he seems to be fully committed to this team.
And he did have a lot of good things to say about STEPHON Gilmore, saying that he's a welcome addition to the Patriots
He said he's
backfield.
One of the best guys in the league.
And that underrated even, So really had a lot of good things to say
Not
about
underpaid, though.
He's not underpaid.
Not at all. But that Butler doesn't seem to be, you know, harboring any bitterness really toward that situation. And I thought Malcolm Butler sounded very mature today in a lot of his answers, and talking about how they, as the group of them, all have a lot of work to do in terms of getting on the same wavelength in terms of communication and all of that. So they'll be working on that during these sessions. Thanks.
I would agree.
On the flip side, Cyrus Jones. You already said he had a drop.
Well, he had a couple muffed punts out there, and he also got beat by Danny Amendola on a deep route, which, I mean, Danny Amendola probably runs about a 4.7, 4.8 40 at this point, so that's not a great sign for a second-year player to get beat by him. It's strange to see Cyrus Jones out there at number 41 also, because that's like an undrafted safeties number.
It's a cut-in-camp number. Who had it last year? Cedric Thompson?
Yeah, Cedric Thompson had it.
Random guy who you probably have never heard of.
Yeah. Whenever I see him out there, I'm like, why is that safety playing cornerback? And then I have to remember, oh no, that's Cyrus Jones, who kind of looks like a safety playing cornerback.
Yeah, but no, he really, I mean, basically the reason he was drafted in the second round, he was a good cornerback at Alabama, but he was drafted for his punt return ability, and he just hasn't been able to put that together whatsoever. I mean, obviously this is a very small sample size. He caught punts for about 10, 15 minutes today, and some other players didn't fare particularly well in the gross weather. Danny Amendola had a drop. So not everybody was perfect. Some of it you can chalk up to the rain, but he just seems lost. It's strange. There was one who just completely misjudged it and fell down and then got up and kicked the ball out of frustration. There's a long way to go, but and he's going to be afforded opportunities because he was such a high draft pick, but he has to get it together if he wants to have a chance of making this team.
Yeah, and it's tough for him too, because Patriots bring in STEPHON Gilmore, so now they've got Butler, Gilmore, and Eric Rowe as those top three cornerbacks, which really only leaves 2 more spots on the roster for cornerbacks, maybe 3 if the Patriots are being generous here. And those 2 spots could easily be filled by Jonathan Jones and Justin Coleman. So it's not as if there's a direct path even for him to make this roster. There is, because he could beat out those guys, but he has competition, and it's not going to be easy for those cornerbacks to make the roster. He's also competing against some undrafted guys like DJ Killings, Dwayne Thomas, and Kenny Moore. So there's some competition at the position, and he has to start showing that he can be better than those guys.
Yeah, at this point, it's every miscue counts too when you're on the bubble and competing with other guys.
And just a quick note, I mean, obviously you can't read too much into the defensive and offensive alignments here, but Cyrus Jones was running with the second team while Jonathan Jones was playing slot on the first team defense. So who knows what that says? Obviously, I think Jonathan Jones played better than Cyrus Jones on both sides of the ball last year in special teams and in defense, so maybe he even is a little bit higher than him right now, despite being an undrafted guy just a year ago.
Coney Ely, defensive end coming over from the Carolina Panthers, someone that a lot of people are looking forward to seeing how he does here in New England. How much of a sense can you get at sessions like this?
You can't really.
Not much at all,
it's pretty much impossible, since there's no hitting, no pads. You might as well not even look at the offensive line and defensive line other than to just get a sense of who's out there starting, which is something that, we're kind of not allowed to talk about anyway. So I think that I don't think he was on the first team, but that's just because, it's kind of obvious. Trey Flowers and Rob Ninkovich are the starters there. So no, there's really not a whole lot that you can gather from that.
The other guys in that position that be keeping an eye on, Derek Rivers and Dietrich Wise, but we'll have to wait until pads come on to really be able to evaluate them.
I think I saw Derek Rivers sort of drop back into coverage today, and he looked decent doing that. So there's one thing.
That's worth.
There's a one note on a Patriots defensive lineman. Yep.
All right. Well, I want to wrap up with Roger Goodell addressing the Giselle, Tom Brady
concussion gate.
Gate.
Don't get me started. I will leave this podcast right now.
Well, this is something that we pondered last week as to whether it would turn into a whole Ted Wells investigation and whatnot. It hasn't.
Sounds like the gate has closed.
Yeah.
Ooh. He's embracing the gate.
I'm back.
Goodell's comments seem to me like just kind of brushing it under the rug, which in one sense I'm, as a journalist in New England, sort of thankful for, that we don't have to do this whole reporting on a non-controversy, but at the same time it is ironic, funny, not funny, that they made such a big deal about the PSI in footballs when concussions is something that actually really matters.
This is one of those things where no one in New England is going to be feeling bad for Roger Goodell, myself included, because he's making, what is it, $50 million per year or whatever it is. And I've actually called for him to be fired before too, but this is one of those situations where he can't really win. If he, starts this investigation against Tom Brady, Patriots fans are going to be up in arms that they're trying to railroad the Patriots again. At the same time, him ignoring this, now everyone else is going to say, well, Roger Goodell doesn't take concussion seriously. So I don't know really what he was supposed to do in this spot. He does. He's put himself in these situations by making such a big deal about Deflategate and by not really giving a crap about concussions in the past. So, it's he's his own worst enemy in this situation. But at the same time, when he starts to say that, you've got half the side celebrating, half the side criticizing him.
Well, when you say he puts himself in this position because of the whole Deflategate thing, that was something that I was kind of wondering as well. Is I know this is completely hypothetical, but if Deflategate hadn't happened, then do you think maybe this would be taken more seriously and used as a good opportunity for the league to address the whole concussion thing? But now, if they were to do it, it just looks like they're trying to mess with the Patriots all the more.
I just think it's hard to punish the Patriots for this, because I don't know what you're what are they gonna? Because from what we're hearing, it doesn't sound like if Tom Brady's agent said he wasn't diagnosed with a concussion this year, which probably meant that if Tom Brady had a concussion, he just didn't tell anybody about it, except for apparently Giselle. And I don't know if you can punish the team, and then you also can't punish the player because there's not specific rules that you need. It's a tough
they haven't even looked for the proof. Maybe there is proof.
But you
maybe
can't.
there are files. Maybe
I'm saying
they
I don't
should
think
ask
there's
for his cell
specific.
phone. Maybe he texted
Yeah,
Giselle that he had a
I'm
concussion
just saying, I don't
and
think
it's there.
even if there was proof that he had, I don't think.
Right, this would have to.
I don't think a player can get in trouble for not reporting his own injury.
Yeah, I
I
don't
think
think
get in trouble for not reporting a player injury, but.
Goodell would probably throw this under their personal conduct policy or something, but that would be such a stretch that I really don't know how you could do it. Like you said, there's no rule in place here.
Punishments aside, I see what you're saying, and I do agree with that. I just do think it's something we'll never know the answer to, but I do have to wonder if Deflategate hadn't been such a big thing that was pinned on the Patriots, if maybe this would be under a little bit more scrutiny.
I don't think so. I don't think so for this reason. Everything that the NFL really mentions about concussions is in a positive light. They always talk about, you know, the improvements that they're making. The concussions are down. They have these brand new helmets that are somehow magically going to prevent concussions. I don't think that they're going to start up this investigation saying that players aren't reporting concussions, because that really would only make the NFL look worse, and it will make concussions seem like an even bigger deal than they already are because of all these concussions that are now going unreported. So I think this is something that the NFL would probably always would have stayed away from. It is an interesting point that, you know, if Deflategate didn't happen, maybe they would be more willing, because if they brought up a controversy like this against the Patriots now, then I think that everyone would be so up in arms about how much the NFL is against the Patriots that they might be a little bit hesitant to do anything at this point this early. But I just don't think that they would have done it about, you know, one of the NFL's franchise players suffering all of these unreported concussions. It's not good PR for the NFL at that point.
Well, in a nutshell, the biggest takeaway is that Roger Goodell puts himself in a lose-lose situation,
Yes.
and therefore makes snow angels legal again.
Yeah.
Celebrations are back.
Touchdown celebrations, yes.
I like it. Except Brandon Cooks' signature one is still outlawed because it is technically shooting a weapon. Because he has the one where he takes the bow and he does the bow and arrow thing.
I actually really like that.
I like
one.
it.
I think that's cool.
It's a great one.
It's a good one.
Could just be doing
But
target
apparently
practice.
he said he really wants to do it. We talked to him about it after. He said he loves this new rule that they're kind of loosening the reins a little bit. Says he wants to do a celebration, but he's pretty sure that he's not allowed to do it.
Yeah,
still.
that way.
So.
I know there's no weapons references, no sexual
and no
references.
like outward taunting either. So like you
no
can't.
twerking.
I'm sure you could. I don't know if you'd be able to twerk. That would
No,
be,
you're not. Is
the no twerking law still in?
Is that
no
the
twerking.
language, no twerking?
I believe it is.
I mean, it might be.
Well, no, I'm kidding, but it does. Yes, you can't twerk.
Yeah.
I know that.
Sorry, Antonio Brown.
I don't know if there's maybe like a synonym for the word twerking, but
I would love
they
to see
made-
that written out in
Yeah.
like actual legal terms.
that would be pretty awesome.
Legalese of twerking.
Yes, so no Antonio Brown twerking.
I think that while we're on Goodell, let's give credit where it's due. It's cool that he is lessening these celebration rules. He probably shouldn't have ever made them more strict to begin with.
That's what
But
my
at
rebuttal was
least
going to be.
he's accepting the fact that he was wrong and dumb and moronic about doing this in the first place, and now he's flipping the script and going back.
But I'm kind of thinking he got really strict just so that when he loosened the reins a little bit, that now he looks like a
I don't
good
think
guy.
he thinks that's far ahead.
Where are you hiding your tinfoil hat?
Right?
It's like conspiracy theory.
She's lost. It's gone right over her tinfoil hat.
No,
Learn something new from Doug every day.
Obviously, everybody hates Roger Goodell. He's not a very liked man in the sports world, especially around here. But yeah, I mean, he's copping up to the fact that he was like, yeah, this was a bad rule. Sorry, we went too far. Let's change it. Give him credit for that, I guess.
I'm excited for the touchdown celebrations to come back.
Malcolm Butler says he has a good one coming if he ever gets in the end zone this year. So keep an eye on that.
Nice.
Any other closing thoughts before we go out and literally get under the weather?
I know. I hope it's stop raining.
My hood on.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning in to Between the Tackles. Hope you guys had as much fun as we did. Coming to you from the hall at Patriot Place. I'm going to go look around, check out more of this.
Sure.
Keep it on NESN.com for all your Patriots news.